Intro to Engineering Design. This is activity 1.3.6, and this will be part one to I section that. And what we're going to be doing in this activity is we're going to talk about how to think about a section view and how to actually create a section view ultimately in CAD software. So if you have a good idea of what a section view looks like, I'm going to use the example that they give um, in the course that, if you've got an apple and you look at the outside projection of the apple and you see what it looks like, you can see some discerning features to it. You can see that, the outside is got a skin on it, but you don't necessarily see anything of what's on the inside of the object. You don't see the seeds inside. You don't see the particular shape that comes along from the inside of the apple itself. You'd only really see that if you were to take a slice of the apple, say you were going to like cut it right in half, and you could actually see the general shape of these apples. And even if you, because I know some people are like, well, yeah, I see this stuff all the time whenever I eat it. And the answer to that is whenever you eat it, you don't normally actually take a cross section. You don't really cut the middle of the apple in half. You don't actually really get to see this shape right here. What you really see is you just see the core of the apple and you just throw away the core of the apple. You might see like a little bit of the seeds, but you don't really actually get a cross-sectional view. So to get a cross section, what you have to do is you have to literally like make a plane that goes through the object itself, and you're going to be looking at it through that plane. Okay, and this is what we would call a sectional view. So this isn't like the actual view from the front side, but it would be like as if we were looking at it from the front side and we had actually kind of like gone into the object for a little bit so that we can actually see what's inside of it. Okay, and another good place where this shows up is in medicine. Any type of medical scan that you're going to do is normally given a cross-sectional view, especially with things like CT scans and MRIs. Doctors are trained to look at MRIs and CT scans as cross-sectional views. And if you ever go into detail about those, you'll realize that there's a lot of details about the human body and also details about how you're actually supposed to read a cross-sectional view that a lot of people don't even really think about. But there's lots of different ways that you could do a cross-sectional view. So you could do a cross-sectional view of like from any particular angle. So you could take a cross-sectional view from the X plane. You could also take a cross-sectional view from the Y plane. Okay, and you could even take a cross-sectional view from the Z plane. So like it's really hard to see like three dimensions in on a two-dimensional screen. But you can take one as if you're looking at the face. You can take one as if you're looking at a cross-section of the skull, or you could actually take one as if you're looking at a cross-section of, I guess in this case, the face again. So depends on which plane that you're actually looking at. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to need to do in this activity, and this isn't normally something that I have people turn in, I think this is just something that we usually talk about, is right here we have a, CT scan of three different pictures of the human body, and those three different planes are being shown right here. And what we need to try to talk about is, what are we actually looking at whenever we see something like this? This is a CT of somebody's like head or brain or whatever you're wanting to do. I guess you could also see the spinal cord over here. But you can kind of see how this cross-sectional area includes everything inside of the object as well. So you can see the outside edges of the object, but you can also see the inside as well too. The same thing happens from each angle that we're looking at. Okay. So you can also do the same thing. So you can do CTs of arteries and veins and stuff like that. And this is how you can actually help identify whether or not which veins are actually blocked. So if somebody has, a heart disease or heart condition or clogged arteries or I don't know, anything like that. I'm not a doctor, don't quote me. But they can actually use these cross-sectional areas and they can look for areas of the veins that actually have stuff inside of it. And they can be like, yo, dude, that's blocked and you have a big problem. Because if your heart is not getting the blood that it needs, I would definitely say that's a big problem. It would be on my top 10 list of things to get fixed immediately. So section views are really important. From an engineering standpoint, we're not really going to be looking at like brains and arms and stuff like that, but we will be looking at parts, and these parts it will be helpful if we have detailed images of them as if they're cut. So like if you have something like a valve or something like this, where the internal mechanisms actually would make a difference on where you would need this part to be located, a section view would be really, really important. So what we do is we create a plane, and we're going to use that plane as the cutting plane. We're not actually physically cutting the object in half, although there are some people who do. Look up those YouTube videos; they're absolutely amazing. I've seen like actual engines just like flat out cut in half, and it's fascinating. But for now, we're just going to kind of look at this cutting plane and be like, okay, look, if I were to cut this in half, this is what it would look like when it is cut in half. Okay, and there's a couple of line conventions that we're going to use too whenever we're actually drawing these things out. Keep in mind in Onshape, we can actually create these drawings, so we can create a sectional view pretty easily. Okay, so what we're going to add is, because we've already talked about construction lines and object lines and hidden lines and center lines, so now we've got the cutting plane line and section lines. We're going to add these two specific types of lines to our repertoire of knowledge, to our tool belt, so to speak. So if we look at any kind of view, let me show you where the section lines are and where the section view line or the cutting plane line. Okay, the cutting plane line is going to be on a regular front or top or side view, and what you'll see is you're going to see like a straight line that kind of cuts through the object, and then you're going to see two arrows, one above it and one below it. What this means is you kind of need to think about this as if they're actually taking this object and they're pulling this side away from the object itself. And the delicious, goody stuff that you're going to see on the inside is what's going to show up on the section view of the drawing. Okay, so you'll know that it's a section view because it should say section either like A or B or whatever section cutting plane that you're using. And look at here, inside you can see all the ooey goodness of this part. Everything that's in diagonal right here, these are what are called section lines. And section lines are the actual material as it had gotten cut in half. Okay, if you see all of this white space in between, this is empty space. Okay, so this would be like as if you were to take this object and then cut it, and then you could actually see like this would just be like flat plastic or metal or something all the way through. Okay, and this is how this would actually work. Okay. And then I think for the next part, what we're going to be doing and what I want you guys to do is we're going to skip the brain part, is we're going to make a section view of this object right here. Okay. Now, this is going to be the isometric view of the object. So what we're going to do for our assignment is this is the top view and this is the side view. What we're going to do is we're going to create a section view of this object. Okay, we're going to create a section view of this object. And we're going to basically look at this and say, okay, if I was cutting this in half, because here's the halfway point right here. If I was cutting this in half, what would it look like on the inside if I were to cut this in half? Okay, if I were to take this object and I were to cut it in half, what would it look like? That's what we need to try to figure out. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of time to think about that. This is going to be your assignment to do. And if a lot of people are having trouble with it, I'll make a video on how to actually do this part. But I want to be able to see your ability to be able to create these section lines. Okay, have a good day, and we will talk later.